1 week season.
1 week season, fam, La Familia. Welcome back. It is Monday, July 8th, coming to you live this week. Again, able to make this work on Monday morning. My name is Mike Johnson, M Johnson 86. Of course, I am here with 1 week season. We have our Bestball Plus 2024 rocking and rolling. We are right at about 2 months before the NFL season kicks off. So things are moving along quickly in this best ball summer. So hopefully you guys are learning some things, enjoying your drafts, getting out and enjoying the summer. I'm going to go ahead and bring on my esteemed co-host, Mr. Billy Gableman, StatATL. Billy, how you doing today?
Happy Monday, Mike. Always fun to be doing these live with you. How's everything in your world? Is that your orange drafters hat?
It is. No, it's this is a Cabo San Lucas hat. Just, it's like good luck. And then I am rocking the fantasy draft t-shirt for the OGs of fantasy. Anybody who remembers fantasy draft, RIP.
You know what? Next week I'm going to make myself a mental note, Mike. Next week I'm going to wear some DraftKings swag or something like that. I'm not cool enough to have drafter swag, so.
Well, you will be soon.
Soon, yeah, we're getting there.
150 drafts later, you'll be there.
I'll be there. I'm there already in the $2, or in the $2 that's closed already.
Yeah. How close are we getting on your draft here?
We are loading. 9 of 12.
9 of 12. Okay, so we got a couple minutes here. Mad Sox fantasy draft Monday Night Football kaput. Yes, pretty much. Yeah. So fantasy draft. Obviously, we're drafting on drafters today. And I've talked about this a couple times previously. It kind of was the drafters of like the DFS industry, like the third site. They were up and coming. I know Yahoo does some things now, but they're obviously more like corporate back type of thing. But fantasy draft was very similar to drafters in that there was a huge edge. There was a lot of overlay. They were trying to get the site up and running, trying to get things rolling, but it just never really took off to the extent. I mean, it gained popularity as people kind of, Mad Sox says monkey knife fight. I think they became, which also went out of business. Yes, that's correct. I think Monkey Knife Fight like bought them to try to obtain their user list or information, that sort of thing. But anyways, it was a very good site for attacking edges because the scoring was like the same as DraftKings, but the pricing was different, and you kind of had this mix of like high volume players who were playing there because of the overlay and they knew it was like good value, but they weren't like, it wasn't where they were focusing their content and their strategy and all that. So, they were putting lineups in, but weren't like fully focused on it because DraftKings and FanDuel were like their main focus. Very similar to what we're seeing with drafters now, which it does have, especially in the $15, pretty sharp draft rooms, especially when comparing it to like DraftKings. Like the level of player on there is relatively high, but obviously we know the other reasons, that our Best Ball Plus subscribers especially know the reasons why drafters is really kind of the place to attack. Anyways, fantasy draft was kind of the same, and you would get like stragglers, like new people to DFS and stuff that would just check it out. So anyways, that was kind of where I hit a lot of my early DFS bigger scores was on fantasy drafts. So shout out to the OGs. Yeah.
Nice. Well, hey, the draft is live. We've got the 11th pick.
Okay.
And we've got I see an OWS avatar in the 2-hole there with Pete G9699.
Look at that, Pete hopping in. Not yet. He's commenting in our Discord. Yep, Pete, we're here. Let's see. So he goes with Lamb. So just a funny thing with like we're talking about market reports and stuff. Did you see the stuff with Dak this week?
Of course, yeah.
Oh yeah, you sent it to me. The foot sprain, and he was in a boot and stuff.
Mhm.
It's funny because especially on drafters, he pretty much always goes around that like 8th, 9th round turn, like that
Yep.
94 to 99 range.
Yep.
And quite often it's whoever the Lamb drafter is pairing him with Dak. So that's kind of a like I saw him in the like 2 days after that report. Like I saw him dropping several times to where he'd go in like 105, 106 range. Again, just like we talked about, like this time of year, people are just constantly being fear mongered.
Yeah. All right, so we're on the clock here at 11. I'm going to lead with Brees. Generally find myself taking wide receivers in the first round, but I don't mind taking Brees or Bijan. We'll just see how it shakes out from there.
Yeah, what let's see. I'll let you make your other pick and then I'll ask what I've
Go Nico Collins here. I feel like with a running back early, I'm going to probably take a bunch of wide receivers. So let's just start firing them off.
There you go. So you took Brees Hall there. The Jets. The Jets are an interesting offense to evaluate for this season. You have obviously Brees Hall. He kind of finished last year on a tear. Garrett Wilson, a young, really capable wide receiver. You know, he ranks really high in separation metrics and very good after the catch. Can make contested catches. Kind of a very complete receiver, but he's the quarterback play he's dealt with his first couple of years has been subpar to say the least. So, anyways, then you've got Tyler Conklin at tight end, Mike Williams coming off an ACL, Malachi Corley, the rookie, kind of underneath yards after catch type of guy. So I guess, just in general, like, are you optimistic about this Jets offense? Obviously, you took Brees here, but what are your expectations for them in what should be a pretty tough division?
I think for me, I'm middling. I don't shy away from Garrett Wilson or Brees Hall in the first round. I think for both of them, I think Brees Hall has running back one overall potential.
Mm-hmm.
Garrett Wilson, I don't know that I could see him being the overall wide receiver one. I think it's in his range of outcomes, but I think it's unlikely. But he could certainly be a top 5 wide receiver, in my opinion. So yeah, I don't mind shying away from either of them in the first round. I don't find myself taking Mike Williams very often. To me, I don't mind Corley or Conklin because just of the draft capital that you're spending, it's just so much later. And I think I sent you a draft yesterday where I took Aaron Rodgers in the 20th round.
Yeah, that was wild.
And so, yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's not a team I'm avoiding, but it's not a team I'm going out of my way to get exposure to.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, I think, yeah, you kind of hit it on the head. And then they have, like I alluded to, the Patriots are always, a fairly tough defense. They're at least going to make it difficult for you, even if their team isn't the greatest. They just scheme well. I think even with Belichick gone, there will still be some carryover to those aspects. And then the Bills and Dolphins are 2 really good teams. So, that's over a third of their schedule right there where, should be pretty competitive games. And just the way that they play offense generally has been fairly conservative. And then Aaron Rodgers, he loves to milk the play clock, slow things down, and use the full play clock to try to get in the right play. So, I don't think that they're going to have like excessive play volume, and it doesn't seem like they're a shootout type team because their defense is so strong. I'll let you pick and then keep going.
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably stay top of the board, although it does go by week 14 for both of my first two wide receivers, which I know you and I have a slight difference of opinion on there. I don't completely avoid it since I just did it, but I try to be conscious of it. Probably limit my week 14 bye to maybe my 8th or 9th wide receiver if I take, just because come week 14, I'm gonna have to come up with a tean here.
There
you go,
is.
Maury. Just keep the wide receivers going. You knew that pick was coming.
I absolutely knew it. Well, I was going to make a comment about because Tank was the top of the board, and that would be a second Houston receiver and third week 14. So I was going to make a tongue-in-cheek comment, and then I saw Amari, and I knew what was happening. I've seen this movie before.
You've seen this movie. You've seen this movie before.
So as far as the Jets go, though, I think that they're a hard team to see the like higher end scenarios for. Because if they are good, I don't think they're just like running teams. I don't think that they have that explosive of an offense or play that fast. We have when you consider like kind of for DFS and for fantasy, like you want volume and you want efficiency. Like if you have a player who has high volume and really high efficiency, they're going to be really good. Now, I guess where I'm kind of going with this is
okay, that's not horrible.
Team stacks are such like everyone wants to like team stack, or like on other sites where there's playoff contests, everyone wants to game stack. But I think that they're the type of team where, like, if you get Brees or Wilson early, or even both, I don't know that you have to like load up, or add those ancillary pieces, because like I don't know that their volume is going to be there where, from a stacking perspective, like Hall and Wilson could both be like top 8 at their position. And usually when that happens, like, oh, the offense did great, but like they could just absolutely hog, 60% of the production.
Absolutely.
Or higher. So, I think it's just something to keep in mind. Again, we talk a lot about it at 1 week season, but the context of teams and how they're scoring points and kind of how the pieces fit together.
I was too curious. I had to look. I've got Amari on 60 out of about 250, 260 drafted teams so far. So he's probably one of my higher wide receiver exposures, but I don't know, but 20 to 25%, somewhere in that range, 22, 23, not outrageous. But he's a guy that I'm super high on. And to me, I think that's taking a stand, is being in that 25. I know that we talk behind the paywall about exposures and how we particularly like to look at it, but I think just from a very high level, I think we were looking at some other folks that are taking 50 or 60% of one guy, and nothing wrong with taking a stand. To me, I'm pretty risk averse. I think that's a little aggressive, but I think if you're 20 to 25%, you're 2x, 3x the field on that, since every guy is getting drafted, 8.3% of the time. So to me, that's taking a stand and not being ridiculous. But.
Yeah. And I think that's where you can just make the right decisions for those teams, right? Like, where does he fit the right way? It doesn't necessarily have to be like, I have to get like to this target percent, or I'm at this percent, I have to go down. And also just understanding, especially this time in the draft cycle, we still have 2 months. So like, even if you do get up to, you can go ahead and pick while I'm talking, but even if you do get up to like a crazy percentage on a guy, or on other guys, like you don't have that much of them, like there's a lot of time for that to even out. So you don't want to like force them on builds where it doesn't make sense, or that sort of thing, because it could be a thing where maybe their ADP rises a bunch later and you have to pay a way higher price for them. So it's, again, like just understanding, treating each draft as its own entity, I think. So who did you take there, Rice?
I took Rashee Rice. We'll talk about that in a second. I think my decision here is, am I taking AR or am I waiting on quarterback? I have Pittman already, which I like the correlation. I'm probably going to do it. I think this is a good build for Rashee Rice. I'm not giving too much behind the paywall strategy away, but those Bestball Plus subscribers who have listened to the training sessions will know why this is a good build for Rashee Rice, in my opinion.
Yeah. So right after you took, or is he still on the board? James Cook is on the top of the board. So he's going pretty consistently in the 6th round.
Mm-hmm.
Last year he had, in full PPR, which is drafters scoring, he had games of 19.9, 19.2, 19.2, 25.1, 36.1. So he had, 5 games of 19 plus points. He had, 4 straight at one point of 16 or more once they kind of went to him as like the feature back after their offensive coordinator change. So just kind of with the nature of the market, with how receivers are going so early this year, seeing a guy like Cook falling to the 6th round pretty consistently on what we know the Bills. I mean, the Bills have been, a top 3, top 5 offense for a couple seasons now. I get the idea with like Ray Davis, the rookie, coming in, and they're pretty high on him. They're talking high about him coming out of the draft. But like we've talked about before, what team doesn't speak highly of the guy they just drafted, right? So and even him, he was a 4th round pick, picked 128th overall. So I think Cook is probably one of the better values. And I've found myself really loving him, especially on specific builds that I've had.
Mm-hmm.
What are you, I guess, do you have any thoughts on him or the Bills in general? Yeah, I'll let you fire.
Yeah, I mean, I think Bills in general, I generally am more of a bear than a bull. I think they traded away their top 2 wide receivers. I think there's a possibility that the offense takes a step backwards this year. Doesn't mean they might not finish top 10, top 12. For me, it's hard to see them as a top 3 offense. And maybe I'm totally wrong on Keon Coleman. Maybe Shakir shows more than he did outside of like 1 or 2 games last year. I don't know. I think the offense is going to take a step back. I don't mind taking some shots. I've taken Josh Allen. I take James Cook. I find myself taking Ray Davis the most of those, just because of the draft capital you got to spend on it. And a lot of times on rosters where I'm taking Davis, he's my running back 5. Where I don't have to be right. Like he could see no time and that roster could still do well.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like that's the other thing with percentages, like we were talking about player exposures before, is it's not just the amount, like the percentage that you own of a guy, like it's it's the volume plus the cost, or times the cost, I guess, would be, it's like if I go by I don't even know. If I go buy 10 baseballs from the store versus if I go buy 10 baseball bats from the store, I have 10 of each thing, but how much did I spend on it? The percentage, sorry, that was a weird analogy, but You get what I'm saying. Like, Davis is like the cheap access to the offense. And I kind of feel like that is probably playing a bit of a role in why Cook isn't being drafted as high as maybe you would expect. The guy who was the lead back for a good offense last year, uh, he had 1,600 yards from scrimmage, a couple of monster games down the stretch. I would expect him to be going probably around earlier, even with there's not that big a difference, I guess, between him and like Isaiah Pacheco on the surface of it. Other than, like you said, the concerns are on the Bills offense. But I think that just the cheaper access to Davis, you can go ahead and pick.
Yeah, I'm just deciding what I want to do. I think ideally I want to grab Jake Ferguson. I'm going to punt on him for now, just because the guy in the 12 hole has 2 tight ends. So I think it's possible, but unlikely, that he takes 3 tight ends in the first 7 rounds. But
yeah, always check. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say it's possible.
Yeah, I'll always check that draft board, of course. I really do. I love drafting at the 2 and 3 slot or the 10 and 11 slot for that reason, because you can kind of if you're paying attention to the draft board, you can just gain those little value edges on knowing, okay, I want this guy. I know that this 1 or 2 guys picking after me aren't going to pick this position. And that is one thing with drafters I'd mentioned before. In general, I think it's a pretty sharp field. Like, most draft rooms are relatively sharp. You don't see the crazy things like you do on DraftKings, that sort of thing. But that kind of provides you like a little bit more security, and that things like that are more predictable, because the sharper players, okay, he's logically not going to pick this player, so I can wait on him, that sort of thing. I want to finish up the James Cook. We've been talking about it for a while, but I am just like, I'm very high on him. And just looking at the Bills offensive situation, and as I'm sitting here thinking about it and talking about it, I'm kind of like, I've passed on Cook more than I should have, just because of kind of where he's being drafted. But like, if we play out the scenario where their offense struggles more than it has, their defense also lost several guys to free agency, that sort of thing. They might take a step back. Now, from like a 1 week season, we talk a lot about game flow and how important that is and how things kind of flow together. So when you think about it, Davis is supposedly the more like rugged runner and kind of does some of those things between the tackles. He's been talked up as a guy that fits in that regard. So if we think that their defense might take a step back, their offense in general might not be as like potent and high scoring because they've lost that firepower at receiver. So I look at it as, if they're getting less production from their receivers, they're going to likely have to rely, especially in the passing game, on some other modes of production, which that could be Dalton Kincaid. And James Cook is more of like the receiving threat. Likewise, if they are not scoring as much or as efficiently early in games due to their receiver issues, if their defense is giving up more points, what kind of game flows does that lead to? Playing from behind more than they have in the past. Both those situations are, again, while Davis is kind of the shiny new thing and he's the cheaper thing, Cook is the guy who, he could see like an 80 reception season while getting 60% of the carries or whatever. So that's kind of how I'm looking at him. Obviously, I still like Davis too, just because it's the NFL, and I mean, he's one, James Cook high ankle sprain away from like 6 to 8 weeks of being a top 15 back. But Cook's a guy that I think is probably going at least a round later than he should. And that will end my James Cook monologue for today.
Well, I saw that Josh Palmer just went off the board. I think we had some subscriber questions about Chargers wide receivers. You want to lead us into that? I'll take a look and figure out what I want to do here.
You figure out your picks here. So, so questions from the Discord asked about, two receiver rooms. One of them was the Chargers, specifically Josh Palmer, Quentin Johnston, and somebody else mentioned Brendan Rice in that. So, you have Palmer, you have Johnston, you have Ladd McConkey, you also have DJ Chark, and then Brendan Rice is a rookie. He's a rookie. His dad actually, Jerry Rice. So obviously got some genes there. There's quite the gene pool coming into the NFL this year with Luke McCaffrey, Brendan Rice. There's Marvin Harrison Jr. You got Bronny James in the NBA. I guess it's that season of life where it makes us all feel old. But specifically for the Chargers, I think the tough part is there isn't like necessarily a guy that jumps off the page. Like he's clearly better. And they each have, I talked about it, I guess, last week with the Kansas City wide receiver or the receiving room receivers and tight ends. You can make a case for all these guys. You can also make a case against them. I'm not overly, I guess I'll say I am more likely to target those types of guys from the Chargers on, or be willing to take them, I guess, on DraftKings or Underdog, where they could, because there's going to be some spike weeks, but it's hard, especially at this point in the draft cycle, to feel good on the cumulative scoring site like Drafters on that they're going to put together like a big season across the board, even if they do emerge as like the top or second option. I guess, do you have a preference of their guys?
I think for me, again, it kind of falls more into that draft capital. I'm in Atlanta. I'm a UGA fan. I don't find myself taking Ladd McConkey all that often just because of where he goes. I think that if he went in the same range as Josh Palmer in that 8th, 9th round, I'd take him a lot more. Mm-hmm. So I think just in terms of draft capital, I prefer Josh Palmer. It's hard for me. I know he was just a rookie last year. It's hard for me to take a lot of Quentin Johnson. I mean, he played all 17 games, and I think he averaged 25 yards a game. It's just like he just was miserable last year. Mm-hmm. And they've got a new coaching staff, so there's no alliance to him as I think was he a second round pick last year? Or first round pick? I think he's second. But
who? Johnston? He was a first round pick.
Yeah. So I feel like the coaching staff just, their goal now is to win. Not that the old coaching staff's goal wasn't to win, but like they're in full rebuild mode here. The Chargers. So I don't know. To me, they're not an offense I'm targeting a ton out of the wide receivers. I don't mind taking some shots on the running backs just because we saw what Jim Harbaugh liked to do in Michigan. He loved to run the ball. So they brought in Gus Edwards. They brought in J.K. Dobbins. They've got the rookie Vidal. I'm not sure exactly how you say it, to be candid.
Kamani Vidal. That
could be it. I don't know. And they're going so late. So I'm willing to take shots there just because, again, he's generally, running back 5, running back 6 on those builds. And mm-hmm. I don't mind because then again, if you're wrong, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't hurt your team.
Yeah, I am. And somebody did ask a follow-up to that is Herbert going too low? I think so. I think Trevor Lawrence just went off the board. Herbert usually is going around this range. And
he's still on the board now if I wanted him.
10 or so picks. Sometimes, I mean, I've even gotten him at like pick 150. Like he'll fall a long ways. I think him and Lawrence are two kind of classic bounce back type candidates. I also think that there's a couple of things that I really like about Herbert. One, the Greg Roman, the Baltimore offense. Herbert has rushing ability that's never really been tapped into. He has the physical size to make some things happen, and just the offenses he's played in, that's never really been prioritized. But you have that on one end, and then also we talk about the game flow aspect I was talking about with James Cook and the Bills. And you think about the Chargers, they have, I wouldn't say that they're like totally rebuilding. They still have Mack and Bosa. Their defense, but their defense, I'll say this, they're built to play from ahead. They want to focus on the running game, or that's kind of like their bread and butter for Harbaugh. Roman is generally one of the more run-leaning coordinators in the league. So they're going to try to build this team to control the clock, control the game, let their pass rushers tee off when they build a lead, that sort of thing. But things don't always go as planned, as we know. And you think about they're in the Chiefs division. I'm going to pull up when I let you talk what their projected win total is this year. But it's not like they're projected to win 12 games. So there's going to be at least a few games where they have no choice but to go into comeback mode, where they can't just like pound the rock for the entirety of the game. So when you look at Herbert and you have that in games that they do control, that added rushing upside, and even if they split up the production to the receivers and tight ends, and they're getting the running backs involved, and so none of those guys really stand out. Herbert is a guy who was being drafted in the 5th round last year, and I didn't have a ton of him there. But again, talking about that combination of cost, has there been an overcorrection where he just went in the 12th round here? I think he's a guy that's really interesting for me, and that I've been targeting a lot. Kind of Trevor Lawrence is kind of on the same, not the same extremes. He was like a 6th or 7th round pick last year, now going in like the 10th or 11th. So not quite the same extremes there, but the same sort of deal where it's a high pedigree, talented quarterback who is at a significant discount.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I was just I was looking at Spalt's team. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. The guy in the 7 hole. I like this build. I don't know who this guy is. I'll just pull it up on screen here. I like the correlation he's got. I like some of the other things that we talked about a little bit behind the paywall, in terms of his 2 quarterbacks and things. I like this build personally. When you take Bijan in the 1st round. Don't need to say any more about that, but just one that caught my eye as a roster that I would build or could.
How's Pete G's team looking so far?
I mean, I think we got to say it's looking great, but let's take a peek. He's got Jalen Hurts. He's got 3 running backs so far. Barkley. He's got 4 running backs.
Heavy on Philly here. He's got Hurts, Barkley, Devontae, Goddard, and then he's
Yep, I'm seeing a bunch of week 5 and week 7s.
Yeah, couple of Dallas guys there with Lamb and Dowdle.
Mm-hmm.
All right, yeah, he's
like
got
that correlation.
Roman Swift. So yeah, 3 pretty decent offenses to bet on. So
yep, exactly.
We'll give you a passing grade today, Pete.
But thank you for tuning in, most importantly.
Yes, as always. The other question, so Darnell Mooney just went off the board at pick, would that be 142? So other question was about the Atlanta wide receiver rooms. Obviously, Drake London goes in the 1st or early 2nd, late 1st or early 2nd, pretty much every draft. And then, Kyle Pitts kind of is a part of that receiving core, even though he's a tight end. Then they've got Darnell Mooney, Rondale Moore. I guess, do you have any thoughts specifically on those guys or on their offense in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Falcons have to be better this year. You know, they've got Zach Robinson came over from LA, and I think for Falcons fans, which I'm kind of indifferent, despite the fact that I live in Atlanta. I think for Falcons fans, you kind of have to be excited. The bane of their existence got fired at that head coach. And, I think that all signs kind of lead to them being more explosive. Let's take another 14th round, or at least his 14th week bye. At least it's my first running back with that bye. I don't know. I mean, I think if you compare them to like the Rams, the Rams were really concentrated. They ran a lot of 11 personnel. So, 3 wide receivers, 1 running back, 1 tight end. I think that, Jonnu Smith's out of town. So I think that shows really well for the potential for Kyle Pitts. I think all 3 of the main wide receivers, I do like. I don't mind taking shots on, certainly at their, at their draft capital. Generally, Drake London goes in the first round. You chat here for a second. Let me figure out what I want to do here.
Yeah, so I think the Falcons are, again, another interesting spot to look at the psychology of how things have played out. And the difference between real life NFL analysis and, the talking points that kind of the industry grabs onto, and, everybody kind of rolls into a very similar opinion. And the Falcons, so you had 2 things. Now, before I dive fully into, why did you bring up the Rams?
Why did I bring up the Rams? That's where Zach,
There you go.
their coach.
Did you say that before?
I did. That's
okay. Sorry, I must have checked out. Yeah, so Zach Robinson, obviously coming from from the Rams, taking over, looking for similar things. Hilo and I talked about some of those coaching things on last week's Industry Experts. But the Falcons, when you look at things, the big stories around them, one was the coaching changes. Arthur Smith's gone. You got Zach Robinson in. But then, okay, they signed Kirk Cousins, but there's some worry around. So you're thinking, okay, he could throw the ball. He's a pocket passer. He's elevated a lot of teammates. There's a lot of excitement around them. But then he's coming off the Achilles. And then they draft Michael Penix at 8th overall in the NFL draft, quarterback out of Washington. Mm-hmm. So then everyone, for a month, and it's quieted down just because it's old news kind of, but still kind of that sentiment is there. This was a terrible pick. What a horrible waste of resources. What are they doing? Most people didn't have Penix rated that highly. They thought he was like a late first or second round type grade. And everyone knows better and this and that. And, some of those things like I do agree with, but again, separating reality from fantasy football, that decision, I think if they don't draft him, I guess the sentiment towards the Falcons would be a lot higher. Mm-hmm. People would be more confident, obviously, in Cousins' status. I think he would be drafted higher, obviously. But I also think that the way people think about this offense would be significantly different because the focus would be on that change, and they have the high-profile players as opposed to this kind of indecision or question marks around the quarterback position. So I think that and you look at the ancillary pieces, with Tyler Algier as a backup running back, with Darnell Mooney, with Rondale Moore. Now, I think Mooney, really interesting as a guy who could really benefit from playing with, whether it's Cousins or Penix, like more of a traditional passer that can get the ball down the field, as opposed to the quarterback situations he's had in Chicago. And I think Rondale Moore, he's a pretty talented guy we saw coming out But he was in a spot where his skill set was kind of similar to like most of the other receivers in Arizona. So I think those guys could, I think at least one of them could be like a really big value this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could certainly see that. They're guys. I mean, I feel like I'm high on Atlanta's offense. I don't find myself taking Drake London a ton, just because he generally goes in the top 14 or 15 picks. And to me, that's drafting for his ceiling. I don't think that's his most likely outcome. That kind of, you throw in the 3 or 4 running backs, that 3 running backs go before him, that basically has him as a top 10 wide receiver, certainly in his range of outcomes. I don't know that I would say that's his most likely outcome. Whereas you take some of those other guys who are going in the first round, AJ Brown, or, to me, though, it's more likely that, and obviously Drake London goes a few picks after, but, he goes in the first round, in that 12-13 turn a lot. I don't know. He's probably the guy I have the least of on the Falcons, just because of the cost.
Yeah, makes sense. Who we got here? So are you about up again?
I'm about up again.
Did you take Cousins on the last pick?
I sort of took Cousins. I auto drafted Cousins. I was trying to decide what to do. I don't think I would have taken a quarterback there. I needed another running back.
You have him with Richardson? That's all right.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I'm not upset. It's just not what I would have done if I was picking. I mean, I'm going to reach a little bit here. Grab Rashawn Johnson from Chicago.
Can you pull up your roster so far? So you've got Brees, Jalen Warren, Kendra, Jaleel McLaughlin, and Roshan Johnson. Oh, you could pull it down if you need to pick there.
Yeah, I'm gonna probably grab a tight end here. I got a week 7 bye. I'm gonna grab Conklin here.
There you go. Yeah, you bet. You took Hall, so you're betting on that Jets offense.
Betting on the Jets offense.
Yep. Yeah, is Rodgers went at pick 159 here. So in that other draft you were talking about, you got him like 80 picks later.
Yep, 6 rounds. Yeah, so I mean, so far we got a 2-5-7-2. Probably need a few more receivers here. A little thin with taking Brees kind of in the first round. Not horrible. Not anything. Not a room I'm super excited about, but not horrible. Right. Honestly, the running back room's a little weak. It's not horrible, but it needs either Kendra Miller or Jaleel or Roshan. It needs one of them to be right. And again, we're in early July, so that could totally change.
So Rashad Bateman went off at the turn there. Isaiah Likely's near the top. What are your general thoughts? I guess, how optimistic are you on the Ravens? Obviously, they were a high-end offense, one of the top team in the NFL for the regular season last year. And you look at, they lost Beckham. Mark Andrews missed some time. He's back. So they've got Andrews and Likely. Added Derrick Henry at running back. And then they've got like several running backs who contributed last year, or, they've got a rookie plus Justice Hill plus Keaton Mitchell. There's just kind of a lot going on there. But they're a team where, if we think that they are going to maintain their overall level of production as a team, there's certainly a lot of value on the board there.
They're a team. I don't know that I have anyone specific. Probably my highest exposure is either to Andrews or Lamar. they're a team that I have, again, when I'm, jumping into exposures, as we've talked about, it's really more builds than actual exposures. They're a team I have a lot of, just kind of across the board taking shots for exactly the same reason that you said. They were one of the top, they might have been the top offense last year. And outside of Lamar and Zay Flowers, those three, and Andrews, they go in the top first 5 rounds generally. And then you get about almost a 10-round gap, 14th, 15th, 16th round before any of the other Ravens go again. I love taking shots. I don't think I'm going to get him to fall to me at 203. I love taking shots on Devontae Walker. Going in the 17th round, guy that can stretch the field. I don't want to say he's going to be the replacement for Odell Beckham, but he has that similar type of skill set. He's a guy that I think you could get a few usable weeks out of in the 17th round. And generally, when you're taking him here in round 17, he's your 7th or 8th. He just went off the board, but 7th, 8th wide receiver. I love taking shots on guys like that.
Yeah, and so before we were talking about the Chargers wide receiver room, and part of the issue is, so like Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams last year, like everybody wants to talk about like who is this year's Puka Nacua, but like that was such like a
no one is this year's Puka Nacua. He's not going to exist.
And so like Brendan Rice, for example, for the Chargers, like I think because he was either undrafted or taken very late. So he's one that people like to think he's taken in the 7th round. Could he be the Puka Nacua? Well, like the difference is he's got more now. Granted, they're not like elite guys ahead of him, but you have a 2nd round pick in McConkey, a 1st round pick in Johnston, a guy in Palmer that has produced in the NFL level, a guy in Chark who has a specific downfield skill set. So you just have there's a lot that he has to get through there. Plus, they're not going to be a very pass heavy offense from what we can see. Plus, there's not it just doesn't fit that same mold. And I think people are going to try to stretch because, partially because of the name, but also that situation. I guess where, this offense could be, I was talking up Herbert before, so this is kind of backwards for me, but they could be an offense that struggles. Whereas the Rams have pretty consistently been an offense that produces outside of that one little second half of the year blip when everyone was hurt 2 years ago. So I think that looking at those team situations, you talk about Walker, you talk about likely, like the Ravens, we can say with a pretty good deal of confidence, they're going to be a good offense. Last year they were elite. They could be elite again, but at worst, they're going to be a solid offense. So I think when you're looking for those players at the end of drafts, trying to target teams that have a chance, try to get guys that if things break right, that's one thing, but also they could be not just a guy with a role, but a guy with a role on a team that matters and that's, scores points.
Yeah. I mean, not that I'm trying to continue to talk up Walker, but again, that's a late round guy going to one of the best offenses. And, I like Zay Flowers, but Zay Flowers isn't anything special. I mean, he's a solid player. Don't get me wrong. 2nd year in the league, but they don't have an absolute alpha. Their top target is Mark Andrews. So yeah, I mean, to me, the Ravens are a great team to take some shots on a guy like Walker, just because they're a great offense or historically have been a solid offense. And to me, that's where I like taking shots on guys like that those are the chances of you finding that diamond in the rough, that separator. What's the word you use for it? Inflection point. That's where you could find that inflection point on a guy that could really help you get to the top of the leaderboard, in my opinion. It's likely not a Chargers wide receiver, in my opinion.
And another guy that so he went at pick 202, Audric Estime, if I'm saying that correctly, but running back for the Broncos. He had some hype in the last week, some positive comments about he's like 5'10", 220 or something. Like he's put together. Like Peyton was saying that he can be a first and second down running back. He can pound it a little bit. But you look at like, what do we really expect from the Broncos? Like it would be pretty surprising if they're a top 20 NFL offense this year.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you've got him, you've got McLaughlin, you've got Javonte, you got Samaje Perine in that backfield. So again,
a lot of mouths to feed on not a great offense.
Yeah, and you're not going to feed all the mouths, but so like when you take any of those guys, now I know you have McLaughlin on this, but I think he makes the most sense of the group because his skill set and role, it kind of fits their quarterback. It kind of fits what their likely game flows are going to be. He's probably, and especially on this build where your RB2 spot, we don't really know about. So like if he's able to get you 12, 14 points in some weeks, super valuable on this roster.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I think Estime versus Javonte, it's like, what are you really chasing and trying to be right on here? Like, it's probably a pretty bad offense, and these are like the thumpers. So again, just kind of putting that together. I'll take Estime when he falls to like the 19th or 20th round once in a while. But even then, it doesn't feel great.
Yeah. I think this roster probably needs another running back. Not anyone I'm going to go Garendo here. Just to give myself a little bit more shots on goal.
Hey, you were listening. You took a physical specimen on a good offense.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the thing. I mean, I think, Washington just went off the board, but I think Malik Washington at wide receiver for the Dolphins would have been a good pick under the same pretext there. Are you going to take Elijah?
I'm considering Elijah just because I've got Cooper, so I'm betting on that again. I'm considering a fourth tight end and just kind of looping my wide receivers and tight ends together. I think I'm actually going to do that. And we'll stick with the Rams. I'm going to grab Kobe Parkinson here. I'm not. I'm going to take Elijah Moore because I've timed out. But I think either of those are probably fine. So how do we do here, Mike? We ended 2-6-9-3. Running back room a little suspect. Definitely need some things to break my way on this build for sure. Don't mind the quarterback room. I think this is a room where 2 is the right play. Tight end, I'm fine with that as well. I've got the correlation with Jelani whenever in pick 200 plus.
Mm-hmm.
Betting on the Jets with Conklin and Breece Hall on this roster. I'm high on Jake Ferguson. I think he's probably the number 2 passing option on that Dallas team. So I'm happy with that room. Wide receiver room, maybe a little thin. Don't mind it. I got enough shots on goal. Maybe find some good usable weeks. And, this roster having a chance to cash or win, but cash more likely, relies on the running backs, in my opinion.
So you want to pull it back up?
Sure.
Well, Rashee Rice, I feel like we talk about the Chiefs receivers every week, but, seeing him, and I've had a couple drafts like this, everyone loves stacking, and obviously there's benefits in every format. But he's a guy where I actually find when I look at when I look at a roster and I think about the story where like this roster plays out and works, like I look at this roster and obviously, yeah, you need your guys to do well. But like for Rice, like what's something that happens or how things play out? Well, to me, it's like, well, his legal thing doesn't, it's like the Camara a couple of years ago where he just plays the whole season because the legal stuff hasn't finished up and the NFL just keeps him, doesn't suspend him until that's done. So he gets, he plays a full season or close to it, especially on this cumulative scoring format. And when you think about like from a stacking perspective, I think that Rice is priced, and so are the other Chiefs players, kind of under the assumption that he's going to miss a decent chunk of time, not like the full season or 10 games, but probably like 6 to 8. And so when you take him on a roster like this, you're kind of betting that that doesn't happen. In which case, from a stacking perspective, if that doesn't happen, well, those other guys, they're overpriced then, right? So he's a guy specifically that I actually do like almost a little bit more on rosters where I don't have other Chiefs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't disagree. To be candid, that thought did not cross my mind while chatting with you and drafting. I think I prefer the slow drafts just because you have more time to kind of think through that type of stuff. That was, I think in the Discord, Pete G actually nailed why I liked him on this particular build. But yeah, I mean, you're certainly not wrong. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I always like to kind of, after the fact, I step back, I pull up the roster, I kind of self-grade. To me, this is probably a B- or a C+. This is not a great build. I think, again, nothing wrong with the Kirk Cousins pick. I think I was looking at running back. I probably needed another running back there at 158 to kind of help shore up that room instead of kind of punting with Garendo, kind of taking somebody else who's available at that 158. Maybe this is a build for I think Nick Chubb was probably off the board, but like Irvin, taking a shot on another rookie that has real potential, I think is probably where I needed to go there.
Gotcha. Well, I think it's pretty solid. They can't all be perfect, and honestly, I think that your best rosters a lot of times are going to be ones that when you finish up, you're a little bit uncomfortable with. Just generally speaking, I feel like the ones that you are like, you feel like, man, I just smashed it. There's no way this loses. Like it's the NFL. So like,
I will tell you, I feel like, and that relates to DFS as well. I feel like if I don't have at least one uncomfortable click in there, it doesn't have a shot for the top.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's see how our guy Pete did. So Pete's got a 2-6-9-3 build. I think exactly how I ended up there.
Mm-hmm.
Waited on his second quarterback with Bryce, taking Jalen early. I like that. Barkley, Moss, Swift, Dowdle, Irving, Dillon. Yeah, I know Hilo likes taking some shots on AJ Dillon. I've heard him chat about that. Yeah, I mean, I like his running back room better than mine. If I'm being candid.
Mm-hmm.
CeeDee Lamb, Devonta Smith, Calvin Ridley is Coleman. Yeah, I mean, yeah, a lot of bets on Philly.
Yeah, Philly, Dallas. So we talked before about he was team stacking. So he took on this one, he's got Bryce Young, Xavier Legette, and Jatavion Sanders. So 3 Carolina guys. Before I was talking about like the strength of offenses and kind of using that as a deciding. We've also talked a lot about stacking. I do think that if you are going to take guys from one of those weaker offenses, stacking them is kind of the best way to go, just from a standpoint of like the most likely outcome of one of these guys like outperforming or having like a big year is the offense as a whole is a lot better. So if you do happen to be right on one of those guys, you can oftentimes get 2, 3, 4 spots for relatively cheap again. So I think that like Jatavion Sanders isn't a guy like I'm targeting a ton of. I actually have been taking a lot of Leggett. And then Bryce Young, like I'm not like super high on him. But when I take those guys, I generally will take like a group of them. I'll end up like stacked on the Panthers. That's just at least how I've been approaching it. I try not to end up with like I'm looking for a tight end late and I don't have any Panthers and I'm like, oh well, I'll just take Sanders. I try to avoid that, I guess, and only use him on builds where I'm kind of betting on the Panthers offense.
Sure. Well, Pete, I liked it in general. I think it was a good build. Any other questions from the Discord we wanted to hit on, Mike? Or can we let the good people get back to their Monday?
Yeah, we're just over an hour here. Let people coming off the holiday weekend. They're probably back to work, ready to get back to their week, and they can stop listening to me go on and on about Brendan Rice and Audric Estime.
Yeah, it's okay. I like listening to you talk about those guys, Mike.
Yeah, there you go. Make me feel better. All right.
One thing we didn't hit on, there's a new $2 contest on Drafters. We drafted in it.
Yeah, the new $2 contest, and it is flying. It's flying. What's it at right now? So the $2 contest that Billy's talking about, it's $125,000 prize pool. Their first $2 contest was $100,000 prize pool, and we are. It's 6 days. It's basically we're at 6 days. It was around noon last Tuesday that it opened, so we're about 6 days in.
And it's just shy of 12,000, 11,900.
So we're a little over. We're going to end up a little over 2,000 per day. So kind of trending that, especially the way last one went, where the fill rate increased as it got closer to being full. So we're probably looking at like right around the turn of the month, July to August, for when this one fills. So I'm guessing they'll be able to release another one after this. But again, great draft practice for those of you who are new. Those of you who are haven't, if you are listening and you haven't played on Drafters, highly recommend that you do. Those $2. It's like the mock draft stuff. A lot of people do mock drafts, but for $2 to be able to get some draft experience, get a feel for the rooms, get a feel for how rosters look when you do certain things. I think it's well worth your money just from that perspective, let alone all the expected value. If you are using our strategies and that sort of thing. So again, if you are new to Drafters, use code OWS on your first deposit for 100% match up to $100. So you can fire away, get a lot of experience, and as we get close to NFL training camps opening, you can really kind of get ahead of the game and have a lot of experience. You can be the sharp one in your room. So check that out. Check us out at oneweekseason.com. Again, Bestball Plus 2024 subscriptions just had a price drop last week. So between the price drop using our code on Drafters, you can get a lot of experience with relatively solid expected value pretty quickly. And something I talk about is it helps prepare you, I think, for the DFS season if you're an avid DFS player, just because you're so locked into the team situations and player stuff. So with that, we will let you guys get to your week. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for jamming out. I know there were a couple comments that didn't get to. Looks like Pete and Mad Sox are talking it out about Pete's roster, but we'll let them have at it. We will see you guys next week. I am Mike. He is Billy. Thank you again for joining us, and we will see you in the draft rooms. We will see you on Discord and Twitter, and we will see you at the top of the leaderboards. Pieces.